All right. So, what I'm going to talk to you today is the difference between being a generalist and a specialist, and or to be a specialist that surrounds itself with other specialists. It's going to be highly important for anything that you're going to create and build. Now, most creators and podcasters think that influence comes from knowing more. And so they find themselves like studying harder or stacking notes or adding tips or trying to cover every single angle possible. But the reality is that a lot of our listeners and those who are following us, they don't particularly need more facts. They actually need a clear next step. And there is a big difference between the two. Now, a lot of speakers can talk for hours and say things that are true and get amens or head nods or all these different things, and nothing changes. We see this all across America. Now, the issue isn't the listener. The issue is that the message wasn't built for transformation and it wasn't built for action. Okay? So that brings us to the point that in reality, we don't get rewarded for what we know. We get rewarded for what we can communicate that inspires people to take action, because it's the transformation that produces the change. Now, information as is involved in that, but we are coming to a place inside of society that we're no longer going to get paid for information, and that's just the reality. And so we're going to have to begin to innovate and figure out how we are going to get paid for instilling or prodding or transformation or something that produces action. All right? And information alone is not going to be the path forward. Now, here's basically the big idea that I want to drive home, and that is the influence. It's not going to come from knowing a lot. It's going to come from knowing the right thing deeply, at a deep level, and then applying that right thing. And that's the reason why I'm talking to you today about more specialized knowledge. Okay? Because specialized knowledge is what is going to get you the credibility and the influence that you're looking for. Okay? Your value inside of other people's lives and inside of their journey is the path. That is the path you can guide others through repeatedly with results. And that means a specialized focus. I want to tell you before we go in deeper why this matters, because everything is going to get clear and simpler when you step into the mindset and the frame of a specialist. Your content is going to stop spreading wide and it's going to start narrowing in. Okay? You're going to stop teaching all of these principles and all of these things, and you're going to refine it to one clear topic. You are going to be known for one clear thing, the transformation that you bring. You're going to be known by the message that you are constantly driving home. Okay? And this is going to be a great benefit for how you communicate, how you show up online, and the books and the courses and the podcasts that you do. Now, I have found through some books that I've read lately, and they're very successful books. And so not only do I open a book to read it, I open a book to think about, why is this communication successful? Why did this book really hit home? And kind of dissect the mindset and the psychology behind it, because it's very important. And what I've found with a lot of successful communicators and communication, their book is the one idea, okay? That is the one thought. And then the frame inside of the book is the system and process that integrates that one thought, literally. All right. So even if you go to like 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, the main goal is to get you to be a successful person and get you integrated into the habits. And so then it lays out what those habits are. It's still one thought though it's giving 7 habits, still one thought. Some of my personal favorites, who, not how. The whole premise of the book is to integrate the one truth, who, not how, and to integrate it into a life philosophy and a system that works for you. The Gap and the Gain, right? Amazing, amazing book. One thought. The sole purpose of that is to get you to integrate that system and mindset. So when we think of like specialist kind of thinking, I want you to think of it is whatever it is that I'm creating it with one thought in mind and to produce one kind of transformation. And I am the specialist that is communicating for change and transformation so they can embody that principle, so they can integrate it, and so they can flesh it out. That's what being a specialist is. Now, here's what I know, even of like Atomic Habits. I don't know where Atomic Habits is. Atomic Habits. It is a thought and idea, a main point, and then inside it is all the systems and process to begin to integrate so you can have atomic habits, right? That has a one theme and a specialized theme. Now, I don't think any of these books, and gosh, Atomic Habits is like 25 million copies, like outside of your mind, the success. And so I've read it, dissect the psychology behind the communication. I've seen the tonality, like it's my superpower. I just love doing this stuff. And that's what you're going to find. You're getting communication from a specialist that is going to get you the transformation that you're looking for, and they're mapping out the process. All right. This is the way we have to show up. We have to show up. All right. So knowledge alone is not power. Now, this is kind of an old statement. Maybe at some time inside of our development, knowledge was power, and that you can, communicate a bunch of facts and you can sound smart and people would think you're high class or whatever. In the reality is that knowledge alone is not power at all. In fact, many of us have knowledge at our fingertips, especially now in the day and age of AI, where knowledge is increasing at a capacity that we can't even fathom or handle. Every single upgrade of all of these new technologies, they are not just like 1xing, 2xing, they are 10xing, like, and it's just growing and growing and growing and growing. And that is this knowledge thing is not it's not the end all be all, because we're all going to have this knowledge at our fingertips. In fact, even right now, most of us have the same capacities or the same opportunities or the same access to knowledge, right? Before, access to knowledge was a problem. It was a big problem. If you were sophisticated and elite, you had the encyclopedia salesman that came by, and access to knowledge was very limited. Maybe it was all bottled up in this higher education of Harvard or Stanford or whatever it is, and it was all kind of contained, and you had to be willing to pay the price to get there and all. That is not the world we live in today. Knowledge is completely accessible to all, and it's not power. If it was power, then everybody would instantly be powerful in this kind of knowledge bubble that we're in. And you can see and look around, there's not, not everybody is rising to power, right? And that is because it's actually wisdom that is the differentiator and the transformational moment. And that is the ability to apply the knowledge learned, right? And so when we show up and communicate, it should be in the form of application, not in information. Let's just give the assumption that the people that we're talking to know what they should do. They know they should start that business. They know they should start that podcast, and even the knowledge of it is at their fingertips. Like they can go all of these different locations and kind of find out or figure out how to navigate it themselves and all these different things. But it's It's the practical application that is missing. And that's where we as specialists come in. Now, I am both a generalist and a specialist. And that is, throughout my life, I've done a lot of different things. And I have gained a little bit of efficiency in a generalized sense. Part of that has to do with working in the construction industry and working in therapeutic communities and stuff, in that you learn this kind of generalized sort of thing. But inside of those realms, I never really became a specialist in the sense of I can fix a leak and I can do a floor. I can hang some drywall and I can pour some concrete or something. And so it's like I never really became a specialist at any of those things. And most business owners, they kind of start out as generalists. I think if you're it's really hard to be successful at the beginning if you're not a generalist. And what I mean by that is that you kind of have to wear a lot of hats at the beginning, and that you have to have a kind of universal skills at some degree or level, right? And to be honest, I look at myself and a lot of them were mediocre. Just telling the truth, right? Because so in a business, you got the general seats that need to be done, the marketing, the sales, the service, the financial. I'm probably missing another one. I haven't refreshed myself on business in a while, but you got these different seats. And for a period of time, you have to wear every hat. Hopefully, as a founder, you know how to be a marketer. If not, you're going to have to partner with a marketer very quick. Some of the most successful launches are actually marketers at heart, and then they're able to gather momentum and all this different stuff, and then they find the integrator. If you are an integrator and you don't find a face in a marketer and a person soon, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And that's why I find a lot of integrators that they need to step up and learn marketing skills at the beginning. So at any rate, how this relates to creation is, yes, you can be a generalist, but the quality is going to suffer in everything, right? If I know this personally, if you are writing a book, and I've written all kinds of books, that if you want to be a generalist, and that is that you want to do everything yourself, set up the content, rough draft, editing, formatting, book cover, distribution, all of that stuff, all right? You could go ahead and pull it off as a generalist, and the quality will be what it is from your generalized skill. That's just the reality, because you're a generalist. But if you say that I wanted to create something great, and how were you going to go about doing this? Well, you would go, well, I'm going to get a specialist in each of those categories. So after I've produced my rough draft, I hand it over to the specialist. And that specialist is just proofreading, all right? And then it goes to a specialist that is a formatter, because the proofreader is not a specialized in formatting, and on it goes. And then it goes to, a specialist that is involved more in descriptions and titles and what should I name this book? Because I can guarantee you, whatever you want to name your book, you're absolutely wrong. It's just the reality. Whatever it is that you want to name it is probably not what you should name it. It's the truth. It's sad, but it's true. So a specialist in each area, right? If you want to produce high quality. And so it is with scaling a business, is that at some moments I'm going to have to stop wearing all the hats, and I'm going to hire a specialist, and they're going to have to wear the hat. If I ever expect to grow or to expand or to scale, I'm going to have to step out of being a generalist and start getting specialist. Now, one thing I would like to add here is that you don't have to specialize in the thing. So when it comes to podcasting, branding, influence, getting your name out there, you don't have to be a specialist at that thing. In fact, in reality, you're not, right? Your specialist is this thing. Maybe it's your specialist is coaching. Your specialist is weight loss, and so you're good at that thing. And so you could try to become a generalist and then start wearing all the hats connected to your podcast management, And there's people that do this, and I watch them do it. I I have a proposal with clients, and they, it's crazy, as business owner, they don't see the value, and so, or maybe the cost, and they're actually not doing that very good in business, and they're more like pretending, you know. And so anybody who decides to take on and wear all the hats themselves is very kind of low level thinking, and they're not actually where they are, where they say that they are, because nobody who is a specialist who's making a lot of money would go back to a generalist in anything. There is no specialist who will go back to being a generalist and do it all themselves. They already know the key to growth and scaling is not going back to a generalist, right? And so you see them and they're like, for some reason the proposal doesn't, the money's not there or whatever it is, and so they're still going to set out and to do the thing that they said they were going to do and do the podcast, and they go to the generalist mode and they start wearing all the hats, and that is they're booking the interviews, they're doing the video editing, they're doing the titles and descriptions and all these different things, and the quality suffers, and you know, it's just ticking until they're going to quit. Because here's the reality, and it sucks, but maybe I'm like tenacious and hard-headed, that the first 2 years of podcasting is absolutely tedious if you fly solo. It is tedious. There's no one on the other end giving you applause, or there's no sense of validation. There is you alone talking into a mic week in, week out, and going, gosh, I feel like I should be farther along than this. Now, let me tell you, that's exactly what the 2 years, first 2 years feels like. When you're operating as a generalist in any sort of thing, it is going to be a grind for a period of time. And that is until you become a specialist yourself, it's going to be very difficult and tough. And so there is a learning curve from going to generalist to specialist in any sort of endeavor. Doesn't matter what it is. And so it's going to be a lot of struggle and a lot of pain. And I know this because I did it. And maybe there was something in me that was like, man, I'm not going to give up. I'm just going to keep doing this thing. I'm going to keep grinding, even though the numbers aren't hitting, even though I'm not getting any sort of feedback or validation or anything like that. I'm just going to keep on doing this, keep on doing this, keep on doing this. And, you know, a lot of people don't have that sort of frame. And so they are going to give up and they are going to quit. So I want to pose this question in do you think, like some of the elite people that have built these amazing companies, do you think that they were a specialist in every single sector of the business? Do you think Henry Ford was a specialist in steel? Or do you think he was a specialist in making this one part? Do you think he was a specialist in any of the thing that happened inside of the business? No. You know what he specialized in? He specialized in surrounding himself with specialists, whom, in every time that he didn't know the answer for a thing, he was surrounded by a specialist who did have the answer for the thing. You see, it's absolutely impossible for a brain to hold multiple degrees of specialist. It's really difficult. Now, there are some elite people out there that would consider themselves a specialist in kind of multifaceted and multi-different categories, right? But generally, that's not the case. And so what you have to do if you want to grow your show, grow anything, you're going to have to get out of the generalist mindset and say, how can I get around other specialists? Now, it's my personal belief that when it comes to marketing and influence, getting a coach is going to be one of the greatest things that you can do. And this is tapping into the specialist mindset. Whatever it is that I'm trying to do, I'm going to get a guide who is going to walk me through it, and he's going to get the fast track for me so I can have a more streamlined form of transformation. All right? And this benefits two ways. The first way is you understand that you are going to show up and begin to speak as a specialist that produces a certain form of transformation. And when you are faced with different problems inside of your business or your life or whatever it is, you are going to get a specialist that is going to fast track you and help you through this process. All right? This is why people are successful. All right? Back to the mastermind idea. The mastermind is connected with a lot of people, a network, that are specialists in some degree or fashion, and this is why they are so successful. And this is why they tend to feed off each other, and people begin to grow inside of these circles of networks and masterminds. And the reason is because we have access to minds that specialize in all of these different things. This is the reason why. And let me tell you, if you're surrounded by specialists, how are you not going to grow? In fact, you are today accumulation of the people that you have surrounded yourself with. All right. So let's talk about for a second, starting from the bottom. Now, starting from the bottom is kind of a generalist mindset. So if you're creating anything new, a course, a book, a podcast, and you're starting from the bottom, you can be a generalist and try to figure out everything and get the knowledge, skills, and resources that you need by yourself, and you execute and you carry all of these hats and all these different things. You can do that, all right? Or you can take the fast track in anything inside of your life. All right? So, point number one that I want to bring is you got to own your mountain. And that is high influence speakers. They don't teach multiple different mountains. They own the one. And that is they focus their communication very specifically to one problem, one transformation, and one message. Now, the only caveat to this is that people that have transcended their business and they have a portfolio of businesses, think of like an investor, think of a person who has a percentages in a portfolio of companies, and when you get to that level, it's a whole different game. And I'm not going to even speculate on what that looks like because I'm not there. All right, so let's leave that there. But what I do know about that is none of these people who have empires started out with empires, and the reality is that they focused on the one thing, the one problem, and the one transformation, and the one message. And they got the whole system and the eco structure done. And they begin to invest inside of another business, and then they get that business to focus on the one problem, the one transformation, the one message that they're developing. And then they create this kind of whole empire, and so they can stand above it and they can talk about whatever the heck they want to talk about, right? But for us who are building, we haven't built an empire yet, we're building one single thing, is that we have to own that mountain, own that message, own the one transformation. And that is, if somebody doesn't know the one thing that you do after hearing you, how we going to get any influence? It's just not going to work, okay? And so the best way to do this is own your mountain. What is it that I'm building? What is the problem that I solve? What is the person that I serve best? What is the result that I create? You see, information, it's all going to be forgotten. Informing people no longer works. What works is self-discovery. What works is insight. What works is moments. So if I can get the person clear and I can get them to take a next step, I'm going to have far more influence than the person who is informing. Now, I like to, present a little bit of compassion, and that is, I understand it because I do consider myself an intellectual, and that is, I know a lot of things, and to a certain category of topics, and I could talk for hours and hours upon those things, right? So I understand the temptation for mere information. But even in the information that you're giving, because some things do require a little bit of education before people take action, that even inside of that, the framework is giving a win, getting them off the sidelines, prodding them to take action in the direction that they should go, and a system and a process and a framework that is going to get them there. You see, I don't just want people to start a podcast, though I do. I want them to start a podcast with a guide, who is me, because I know good and well that they will be on the fast track with me, and they will have a launch podcast within 30 days. And so they're going to go from non-podcaster to podcaster, and they're going to have that identity shift and transformation. And then working with me is going to develop a sense of consistency. So they're going to show up daily. So the habits are going to communicate the transformation that they want. And then they're going to begin to reach thousands and thousands of people. And they're going to get the influence and the credibility and the impact that they want. All right? And that is in a short span of time, very short. This is what they're going to get. Now, would they get that as a generalist on their own? No, that's just not the reality. They will after 2 years, after they get an associate degree in experiential knowledge, they will begin to go from there. But no, that's just not the reality. All right? So build the framework. Influence grows when knowledge becomes repeatable. That you have a system and a process that is going to take people to where they want to go. You are the specialist. Now, a lot of people have problem with being a specialist when there is not an integrated sense of acceptance within themselves. Let me explain what I mean, because this could be very confusing. But if you don't want to be the podcast guy, in order for your business to grow, you need to embody and step into the podcast guy, but you don't particularly want to be the podcast guy, where do you go with that? And that is, you don't want to step into the identity that's going to give you the success that you're looking for. Now, here's my tidbit of knowledge on that. I listened to an episode recently that is really, really amazing. And it reminded me of my own journey. And that is, I didn't set out to do this business, I fell into it. And that is, I was bumping along the way, and I was doing my life, and different opportunities came to the surface, and I seen a problem, and I wanted to be able to solve that problem. So I worked on my talent, skills, and abilities so I can solve that problem. And then I created the business. I fell into it based upon a supply and demand thing that I seen, right? It wasn't my 10-year goal. It wasn't, when I was a little boy, I just dreamed that I would, I wanted to be a fireman. Actually, I probably wanted to be Hulk Hogan. Can I just be Hulk Hogan? I just want to get in there and beat some people up. That's what I want to be, right? And so we have this kind of thought and idea that we have these expectations of who it is that we're going to be. And then we have a life path that drops something into our lap. And so we have to begin to integrate our identity. Am I going to be the podcast guy? I decided long ago, I'm going to be the podcast guy. And that I'm going to integrate it because it is the thing that fell inside of my lap. And it's the thing that had momentum, and it's the thing that's working. So I listened to a guy recently, and he had a business that he started out that he was passionate about, right? And I interviewed him a long time ago, like 3 years, and he was passionate about it, and he was kind of a specialist in that department because, his interview had awesome value for what he was communicating. Very good. And through the process of time of being an entrepreneur and going down that path, he began to identify another need that began to show up inside of his circle. And that is that he found that a lot of people inside of his circle, they actually needed help with workforce. And that is to find people that can do tasks. And so he's like, okay. And so the way that he found this out was that he found out that he needed somebody to do tasks. And this is a kind of amazing moment. And these are the moments that determines whether you're an entrepreneur or not, okay? So he's like, man, I'm a small business owner and I'm creating influence and I need to get my voice out there and I need to find somebody that can do this certain task. So he went about and he hired the person to do that task. And then he found out, well, everybody in my circle wants to do the same thing I do, and they want to hire somebody to do that task. And so then they started, hey, can you do this for me, this for me, this for me? And within a short period of time, he had 5 clients. And so you can go, well, I'm not the I'm not the staffing guy. I'm not the virtual VA guy. I'm not this, that, and the other thing. And you could push and resist it and never have a business that comes to fruition. Here's my personal opinion in the matter is that whatever falls in your lap, by all means, grab it and run with it. You know what I consider that as? God. I'm bopping along my journey and something falls into my lap. And I'm aware that it is falling into my lap. So I can do a couple of different things. I can throw it off my lap and totally disregard it. Or I can begin to take the thing and run with it. And the choice is yours. All right. So don't be so locked into an identity because we're on a journey. And our identity shifts according to the experience and to the things that we have. Okay. All right. So build a framework, and that is, can you teach your idea and your structure and your process in a very systemized way, and are you creating a clear path? Now, I've been a couple different coaching programs, and I can tell you the one that creates a systemized process and a step by step are the ones that win. And the ones that slap on you the whole mountain and the whole system, and it's just like, whoo, and you look at it and it's just like, oh my gosh, total overwhelm, those don't do so good when it comes to transformation. And that is, people need to not see the elephant. I mean, you can give them a roadmap of what the elephant looks like, but if they come into your system and your process and the first thing that they see is an elephant, it's going to be absolutely overwhelming. And so the first thing that they should experience is a step, a tiny step, a very tiny step. All right? And that is that as the person steps forward into these steps, so each step that they take with you creates momentum. And each step that you make that is small is going to feel like momentum. And it is momentum because at each moment they're taking another step. And so when I laid out my podcast launch process, I have it like a roadmap and systemized and where it is that I'm going. And I'm taking the person through each step at a time. And they're going along with me with this journey. And we're just, I have the systemized process that I'm going through. And I'm just going through it one at a time until we get there. And that is each step that they make, they're making progress. And that's what people need to feel, that they're taking on a journey. Don't show them the elephant. I mean, you can show them a roadmap, but don't get focused on the roadmap. Get focused with the step that they need to take right now inside of the journey of transformation that you are providing. All right? All right. Let's bring this home to a takeaway question. And that is, am I willing to stop being a generalist, wear all the hats, or am I going to step into my mode of genius, the specialized skill that I have, and am I willing to delegate the systems and processes, and am I able to actually do that, or am I going to stay in an underdeveloped area? You see, if you want 10x growth, you can't do it as a specialist. It's just not reality. All right, I'll see you tomorrow.